Hello. I hope everyone's doing well this evening or this afternoon. Before we get started, I wanted to recognize the importance of the land that we each reside upon. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relations between nations and improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. The University of Regina's main campus and CIPHER are on Treaty 4 lands in the territories of the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this nation home. So please join us in thinking about and really considering how we can each, in our own way, move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and, of course, in a spirit of collaboration. So, to get us started this evening, first of all, I should introduce myself. My name is Gabriela, and I'm so pleased to be here to guide you through the hour or so that we have together. I want to lay out a few ground rules so that this all goes smoothly as possible. I'm praying to the gods of technology. So first, please switch yourself to listen only mode. In other words, if you could mute your mic, that would be great to limit background noise, especially during the presentations. I've heard a lot of dogs being yelled at in this setting. It's cute, but distracting. I also would hope that you could keep your cameras off during the presentations. That would be great. Right on cue, there's my dog. Okay, today's session is being recorded and you will be sent a copy as soon as it's available, and we're hoping that's as early as tomorrow. So if you miss something, don't worry, you'll have a chance to revisit. Now you can go, the GoToWebinar launch window, sometimes it can be blocked by some organizations. So if you're having trouble hearing or seeing, you may have to join us by phone. So you see the little graphic in the corner there, it will show you how to join us by phone. At the end of this, at the end of the two presentations, we have set aside time for audience questions at the end of the session. So you can send us your questions through the questions box, and you'll see that on the side of your screen as well. And those questions will be passed along to myself and the presenters to be presented at the end of both sessions. We want to make sure that you feel as safe as possible in this space, and sometimes that translates to anonymity. So if you want to be anonymous in asking your question, that is 100% fine. Just indicate that you wish to ask your question anonymously, and we won't use any names. All right. Lastly, to access real-time French captioning of the webinar, please use the link posted in the chat. The link will direct you to enable access simultaneous French captioning of this webinar. I know, technology, it's all kind of amazing. So, so please use that. The link will be direct you to a software platform called Wordly, and then you'll be all set in French. Okay. I think we should get started. I should, by way of introduction, really tell you that I'm a journalist by profession, and over the last few years, me and my company, Media Girlfriends, we've entered into the knowledge translation world alongside some researchers and academia. And through that work, I've come to be acquainted with the folks at CIPHER and CIPHER-ICEISP. I hosted an event in person in Ottawa last year, which was similar to this series, exploring mental health and the training initiatives for PSPs that are being developed or are currently being implemented, and the research behind the training as well. And the stories I have heard back then in Ottawa, they were very real and very raw and very vital. And the work, which you'll hear about today, and research being done is equally vital. So I feel quite fortunate to be back with you again. today, and on behalf of the folks you'll hear from today and the organizations that have made this possible, welcome. Okay, get your pen and paper ready to jot down questions as we roll out. We'll be taking your questions at the end of both sessions. All right. I think that we have Rachel up first. I want to turn it over now to our first presenter, Rachel Werrett from the Training and Development Project for PSP. Rachel is the project lead. Hi, Rachel.
Good afternoon. I am going to begin by sharing my slides. So let's hope that this works. Give me one moment to, I shouldn't say let's hope that this works. We know that it does work. It's just a matter of whether or not it works for me now, right? That's the way it goes. Okay. How does that look for everybody? So let us begin. So as Garvia has indicated, my name is Rachel Werrett, and I am the Manager of Training and Development at CIPHER-ICEISP, and I am the program lead for the Training and Development Program for PSP. Again, welcome everybody to the PSP Mental Health Training Showcase hosted by CIPHER. Thank you very much to MC and the CIPHER team for hosting us today. I am the Manager of Training and Development. I've been at CIPHER for over 3 years. I did have a previous role as the Operations Manager of the Knowledge Translation Hub at CIPHER. And previously, I did work at the Center for Continuing Education in Career and Professional Development, managing and leading professional development programs, leadership programs, health leadership programs, and all of those and all of those types of programs. We're going to talk today. I know that Gabby and Nicole also have a presentation today, so we're going to try and make sure that we get through both sets of contents and have lots of time for questions. So we're going to continue on. We are just going to quickly define, not that everybody needs a definition, but we are going to put a quick definition out for public safety personnel. Because we all know that when hearing the term public safety personnel or PSP, most people think of highly visible professions like firefighters and police officers, whether they be volunteer or not, paramedics and police, including municipal, provincial, and federal, so of course the RCMP. But there are many other types of public safety personnel, for example, corrections officers, correctional workers, search and rescue personnel, 911 communicators, public safety communicators, and many of those who are often out of sight, including CBSA agents and corrections officers. So we recognize, although that list is not necessarily exhaustive of all that might identify as public safety personnel, but this is kind of our target audience when we're talking about who our project targets in regards to recruitment for some of our training programs. And so the reason that we kind of have defined, or the reason that we do define, CIPHER does define that way, is because we do work off of previous research data or research information, which is this prevalence information that's showing right now. So as you can see here, there's 2 sets of prevalence information. So prevalence information listed is the proportion of the public safety population that's kind of listed there at the top that's found to be affected by a mental disorder symptom. You can see according to this slide that there is a general population. So if you're not a PSP, and then as you move towards the right-hand side, it lists different sectors of public safety personnel. And if you take a look at the prevalence information for both the mental disorder symptoms and the suicide ideation, planning, and attempt, this truly does show why CIPHER was created, or why we do the work that we do, and why it's so important for us to do the research that we do, because public safety personnel on a regular basis are exposed to potentially multiple traumatic events throughout the course of their day and throughout the course of their career. So this prevalence information really does show how public safety personnel are so profoundly affected by the things that they see and that they do every day. Public safety personnel are disproportionately affected by symptoms of mental disorders or shifts in their mental health continuum on a regular basis. So you'd think that the answer is obvious to why they suffer from these mental disorder symptoms, or why they have more prevalence in regards to suicidal ideation, planning, and attempts. But in actuality, it's not just the exposure to the traumatic events. we do know that there are other factors and stressors that affect public safety personnel that also affect their well-being. I'd also just take a moment here to introduce team training. So this is the training team that specifically works on the training and development for public safety personnel. There's myself and Derek and Caitlin, who are the administrators of the programs. And then we kind of have the research team down at the bottom, who is Michelle McCarran, Alaya, and Robin. We do also have, who's camera shy, I don't have a picture of him yet, is Siavash. He's new to the team. He's our statistician, and he's the one that does a lot of our stats. Obviously, CIPHER and the training team doesn't make this happen without the support of CIPHER and the CIPHER Hub, as well as those that are a part of the CIPHER Hub, which is also the Public Safety Steering Committee, and our ARC network, which is our research network of clinicians. So this is just a quick slide of some of the work that we've done through through our PHAC funding. We are going to focus on the bottom part of the slide today, which is in 2023-2024. Our extension funding consists of continued updated offerings of our Treatment 101 course offering, continued offerings of our online R2MR course offerings at the frontline level, and our new Sleep 101 course offerings. So through our current Public Health Agency of Canada funding, as I said, our project is running multiple types of training in various different formats. We do collect research data at multiple points, both pre and post course, on all of the courses that are listed there. And then to give you an idea of some of the things that we have available, so Treatment 101 for public safety personnel is our online course that's specifically designed to guide participants through the process of deciding upon and obtaining services from professional mental health care practitioners. So we built this based on research and research studies, and as well as knowledge that we removed from a specific toolkit series that was called 6 Steps to Finding a Clinician. So if you go on the CIPHER website, there is a toolkit there called 6 Steps to Finding a Clinician. It helps guide public safety personnel on how to find the right way to find a clinician that's a good fit for them. However, in building that toolkit, we realized there was a lot of treatment resources that weren't all together in one place. And therefore, when we had the opportunity to build Treatment 101, we went ahead and did that. The good thing about Treatment 101, it's asynchronous and it's online, so you completely do it at your own pace and at your own time. It is approximately 8 weeks over the course of a 2-week block period of time. There is a certificate of completion available if you pass a little quiz that we have at the end. It is currently available in English only, but we are running it monthly, so registration is open for November, December, January, and February. So the good thing about this program is that 3 modules are released in the first week. You have 1 full week to complete the first 3 modules whenever you have the time in order to be able to do it. And then at the start of the second week, the remaining modules and the quiz becomes open to you. Again, you can complete it at your own pace, but it does take 2 weeks, and you do have to do part of it in the first week and part of it in the second week. We just know that that's the best way for you to be able to retain all the knowledge and not just cram it all in all at the end right before it closes. So this has been a great addition to 6 Steps to Finding a Clinician. And again, because it's online and asynchronous, it's really easy for people to be able to find the time to access, regardless of whether you're on shift or not. We have had some post-course program data from 2022, 2023 that has come out in regards to Treatment 101, so increased knowledge. So 75% of people report that they have learned a lot or a great deal. 81% report that they remember a lot or a great deal of the course material. And then obviously over 85% feel quite a bit or great deal confidence in their ability to be able to access mental health resources if they need to, which is really great, because what we have found is that people in crisis sometimes, you know, if you're in crisis and you're having yourself a mental health crisis, that people that normally would be very skilled at being able to walk through a process and to be able to find help won't necessarily be able to have the capacity to do that if they're having a crisis themselves. So knowing how you can access skills and knowing where you can access resources is so important. We also know that 75% believe very much or extremely in their ability to be able to implement the skills from that course. So again, very important in regards to the fact that if you find that your mental health, your mental wellness is slipping, and you find that you need more resources, or you're finding you're needing treatment when you potentially didn't need it previously, that you're able to actually implement and still be able to utilize the skills and the resources from that course. The second course that we're offering currently is the Road to Mental Readiness program. We do have it in an online version. It's the level 1 frontline version, where public safety personnel gain key resiliency and toughness skills. The training additionally includes generic mental health education, early identification signs of mental illness, and adaptive coping strategies to respond to those inherent public safety occupations. We do focus quite a bit on stigma reduction and also responding to a person in crisis, whether that be another person that you're responding to, or whether or not it be somebody in your own personal circle or within your sector. We often refer to this version as ER2MR, so if you ever hear anybody say ER2MR, that's what they're referring to. ER2MR, it comes to us from the Canadian Armed Forces, from the Department of National Defense. We have adapted it specifically for public safety personnel. It is synchronous and online, which means that we use a combination of online, of access to the materials on an online platform, as well as synchronous facilitation with 2 facilitators. One of them is always a peer, and they are peer, and the conversations are peer-led. It's approximately 6 to 6.5 hours over the course of 4 specific dates, so you would have to check a calendar to make sure that you're available on the dates that are listed. You do also receive a certificate of completion for this course. Currently, the CIPHER offerings are available in English only. If you have a sector that has access to a level 2 or a master trainer that speaks French, the content is also available if you have access to a French facilitator. This has been a very popular course for us. We've added multiple course offerings over the course of both last year and this year. So November and December for us are actually waitlisted currently, but there is registration available for January and February of 2024. That being said, if the dates for November and December work for you, you can always go to the CIPHER website and register for the waitlist, because inevitably, as we all know, public safety personnel have barriers sometimes that allow them to attend. And so we just recently, for the course that's starting just this week, I think we've had 10 people off the wait list that have been able to join. So if the dates for November and December interest you, even though it is already full, please go ahead and join the wait list if you're interested in that. We do have some post-course data for the ER2MR courses. So 100% of those who've completed the surveys agree or strongly agree that the course addresses issues that are specifically relevant to public safety personnel. 92% agree or strongly agree that since taking the course, they have noticed changes in their ability to show leadership. 82% believe that they can implement the skills from the course quite a bit or a great deal, which is really great, because we talk about stigma reduction and how to stop and how to battle stigma. And so to hear that there are that many people that are taking our courses that believe that they have a greater sense of leadership is wonderful, and that also that they can implement some of the tools that we have given them is also really amazing. The newest offerings that we have at the CIPCERT training page is Sleep 101. So given the increased understanding of the importance of sleep, both mental and physical health, CIPCERT has partnered with Dr. Colleen Carney, who's the director of the Sleep and Depression Lab at the Toronto Metropolitan University, to develop a course specifically for public safety personnel. Colleen is an amazing presenter. This course is also synchronous and online. It focuses specifically, and it does do a lot of work specifically on shift work and how to sleep well for public safety personnel. As we know, there are most of the public safety sectors that work shift work or work throughout the night or have reversing shifts and are not able to sleep while they're on shift, have struggle or difficulty sleeping, which we know that sleep is one of the best ways to recover both mentally and physically. So this course is synchronous and it's online. So Dr. Colleen Carney facilitates the courses. It's 6.5 hours for the full course, and it's 4 sessions. So it's about 2.5 to 2 hours. There'll be the first course, which is Sleeping Well for Public Safety Personnel, is usually on a Wednesday in 1 week. And then we give you guys a break to be able to kind of implement some of the tools or to be able to potentially take some of the information that she's given you. And then you come back the following week for 3 2-hour sessions addressing insomnia and public safety personnel, apnea, and coping with shift work. So you receive a certificate of completion if you complete the entire course, and this course is currently offered in English only as it stands right now. However, we are doing Wordly interactive French for the next 2 sessions. So if you do have somebody that's a French speaker that is interested in taking the course and they're interested in listening to the interpretation, they can certainly do that for the next 2 courses as well. Some feedback that we've had from SLEEP. This is data that we just have from 2023. So from a spring course session that we had and then a September session that just closed. I know that it looks weird that it says 90% on both of those stats. However, they are 90%, to double check them before I put them up there, but 90% agree or strongly agree that the course addresses issues that are relevant to public safety personnel, and 90% agree or strongly disagree that they found the training helpful and that they learned a lot in the course. Of course, we don't have as much long-term data on this specific course because we just started offering it with the extension funding. So some of the outcomes of that long-term 3- and 6-month evaluations will be coming out at the end of the fiscal year, at the end of the funding year. And then just as a nice quote, this course should be taught in high school. These concepts were life-changing for me. So that's really also grateful to hear that not only is it relevant to public safety personnel, but that it's practical knowledge that you can share with your family and your friends, obviously, as well. So I have a quick poll here, and I do need Kara for you to launch the poll because I can't see it. So we've been going through this process of registering public safety personnel in our learning courses that are funded via Public Health Agency of Canada for almost 2 years now. So we've noted that many public safety personnel have many personal, organizational, and operational stressors that can prevent them from starting or completing a training program that they enroll in. So given if that CIPHER lists the time, date, and commitments requirements for their website, and all of the registration confirmation includes all of the information you need to be able to commit, including course reminders. I want to learn from the participants that are here today. If you were to choose to register for a training course, what might be a barrier for you to start and or complete a course? So again, keeping in mind these parameters that you've already established that it's a course that you want to take, and when you register for it, you know that you can commit to the date, time, and requirement. We would like those public safety personnel that are present here today to chat a little bit about what might be a barrier for them to either starting and completing the course, because as a lesson learned for us, we can take many registrations, and the start rate and the completion rate are actually quite low. So despite the content and the information being very valuable, we have found that many people take up seats, but then unfortunately are unable to start or complete the course. So if we give just maybe a minute or so, we can then close the poll and maybe share some results. Unfortunately, if you do choose other, unless we have a chance, Gabriela, to have a chance to kind of dissect what those other options are, we were unable to be able to make the poll. We were unable to make the poll available to type other. And then, Kara, I actually can't see the results because I'm screen sharing. Can you see them?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see them. So can you read them out for me, please? Sorry.
Absolutely. 25% answered withdrawn organizational support. 81% conflicting schedule. 6% the course was not what I thought it would be about, and 25% other.
Okay.
So overwhelmingly conflicting schedule, 81%.
Conflicting schedule. So understanding that, you know, knowing that you have committed to the course based on the dates that have, you know, that there is always that potential of that conflicting schedule. And we've always, as a lesson learned, been curious in regards to how about why people don't complete, but because sometimes people don't even start, we don't even have the opportunity to ask them. So thank you everybody for your feedback in regards to that.
And Rachel, we can absolutely have people drop the other into the chat if you'd like that as well, if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah, if people are interested in sharing what an other option might be that maybe aren't grouped into those categories. Unfortunately, we only have 4 options, so I was trying to keep them in broad ways that I could try and categorize them. But if there is something that doesn't fit into those categories into the other, if you could pop that into the chat, that would be great. And then just to kind of keep myself on time, because I think I'm already 2 minutes over, some program updates. So registration for all of our programs, for all of our remaining programs, are still open. So I encourage you guys to go to our website, which is the CIPHER website, and click on the training tab. The website is always being updated. Use the CIPHER website as a resource. It's an amazing resource. We do request, or we do say, like, attend all the courses you can register for, obviously knowing 81% say that sometimes scheduling does become a barrier in the end. And that the research is always ongoing for this project in regards to the intake of data on mental health and wellness impacts. So surveys prior to the course, right after the course, 3 months after the course, and 6 months after the course are always optional, but we always try and encourage. That's how we keep all of our training evidence informed. That's how we keep it evidence-based. That's how we're able to do the research, to be able to say, yes, this is an effective way of doing training, and no, it's not. So we always encourage you to continue with the surveys if you can. This is just a screenshot of the CIPHER website, and if you click on the training tab, this blue tab right here, that's where you get all of the information in regards to our programming, and including our other treatment program, which is PSPNet, and under Knowledge for You is where we have the 6 steps for finding a clinician, and a bunch of other toolkits for downloading available as well. Okay. Sorry, Gabriela, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I do know that we had said that we were only going to be 15 minutes, and I show that I'm 3 minutes over, so I apologize, but I'll give you the opportunity to introduce Gabby and Nicole from the BOSS Project.
Thank you, Rachel, and no apology necessary. We do have a question for you, but we're going to save that until the end, so I'll circle back around to you with a question that we have around that. Thank you so much, Rachel. So now I'd like to welcome Dr. Gabriela Ioachim, who is a PhD postdoctoral fellow with CIPHER, and is also at the University of Regina, and also Dr. Nicole Bolt, who is also a postdoctoral research fellow. They will be presenting the Before Operational Stress Project, also known as the BOSS Project. So over to Nicole and Gabriela. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're very pleased to be here. I think it looks like, Nicole, you're set up to share. Do you want to transfer that over to me, please?
I don't know if I know how to transfer it back to you.
There, you got it.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so as Gabriela introduced us, we're from the Before Operational Stress Program. So this is a project that's ongoing at CIPHER at the moment. So both Nicole and I are researchers, and we are working on the research team for BOSS, but there's also a clinical team that does the training delivery. So we'll introduce a little bit more about how the program works. And I'll let my colleague Nicole speak first here, and then I'll take you through some of the program outcomes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ioachim. So we're going to start with a brief overview of what the BOSS program is, and I'll explain the structure of the training of the BOSS program and the different formats that the training is available in. And then we're going to discuss our current project initiative and the participation that we're seeing with the project so far. And then I'll turn things over again to Dr. Ioachim to discuss our feedback and experiences from participants, as well as the research that we're conducting to evaluate the BOSS program. So the Before Operational Stress Program is a resiliency-based mental health training program, and it was designed by Dr. Megan McElhern at Wayfound Mental Health Group. And BOSS was originally created to provide accessible early career mental health training for public safety personnel, but it has since been revised to meet the broader needs among PSP sectors and healthcare workers as well. And this program is based on cognitive behavioral therapy principles, and it combines theoretical and experiential learning to mitigate the effects of operational stressors. So BOSS was initially designed to be an 8-week in-person group program, and each session focused on one module listed in order here. And each session lasted about 2 hours, consisting of a clinician-led didactic component or learning component, and then followed by some dedicated group processing time. And BOSS is designed to be administered over 8 weeks with 1 module per session. So the first 6 modules teach public safety personnel to understand the process, to understand and process the connections between their thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, and behaviors. And the final 2 modules are designed to enhance interpersonal relationships by teaching communication and coping skills. So BOSS is currently available in 3 delivery modalities. So that original program that I was talking about earlier is the intensive modality. This is the in-person program where you're assigned to a group with 8 to 10 other public safety personnel, and you go through the training week by week with a clinician. And then this training has both that learning and that group processing component, where PSP get to work through the presented material and then share stories of how that material is applicable to them in their lives. And there's also a peer delivery option where you're still in a group with 8 to 10 other PSP, and the group is led by a clinician, but the training is delivered over video conferencing, and it doesn't include dedicated group processing time. So the sessions for the peer format are only an hour long instead of 2 hours long. And then finally, BOSS was also expanded to include an online self-directed course option. So this is called BOSS Online, and the online modality consists of pre-recorded online classes that can be completed at one's own pace. And BOSS Online is the most widely distributed version of the program, as it's less resource intensive than the other 2 modalities and more accessible to PSP Canada-wide. And so far, there's 1 published study evaluating BOSS in that intensive modality, the original in-person modality. And in this study, BOSS intensive was associated with small improvements in post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, quality of life, social support, and mental health stigma. So now that I've given a brief introduction of what the BOSS program is, I'm going to explain a little bit more about our current initiative. So as part of this project, Wayfound Mental Health Group is responsible for the training delivery. So currently they are distributing an updated online version of BOSS, which features that same evidence-based content built on cognitive behavioral therapy principles, but it provides an updated production value, updated take-home exercises, and content that's further tailored for relevancy to different PSP sectors, such as nursing, paramedicine, firefighting, law enforcement, and legal services. And part of Wayfound's efforts to, reach underserved French Canadian regions, the course is also available in both English and French. So we at CIPHER are responsible for the independent evaluation of the BOSS program. And as part of the current project, we plan to evaluate the updated program and compare the effects of BOSS across English and French speakers. So with funding provided by the Public Health Agency of Canada, BOSS has been available for free for organizations and individuals to participate in. So far, there's over 70,000 public safety personnel that have trained with the BOSS program. And major organizations so far include EMS, healthcare, law enforcement, legal services, fire, and paramedicine, with many other sectors that are not listed participating as well. So now I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Ioachim to tell you more about the feedback that we've received with the BOSS program, and explain about our current research and what we've learned so far with our evaluations.
Thank you. So we've had some great opportunities to conduct some research evaluations with the BOSS program with the past years of funding. So we've gotten a lot of great feedback about the program from participants that have been going through the different training delivery modalities. So we know from these feedback sessions that most participants report that the training is very important to them and that they're very likely to use the skills taught at BOSS. And participants were also very confident that they could implement the skills that they learned, which is very important to us. So that's very encouraging feedback from participants so far. Most people also reported that they had used the skills that they learned on a weekly basis. So these seem to be skills that are implementable relatively quickly and implementable routinely across their lives. And the top skills that participants developed and that they retained after the program were reported to be self-monitoring with the window of tolerance, which is a method that's taught by BOSS to check in with your mental and physical needs. The breathing exercises, communication skills practices, and opposite action exercises. So these are, for example, if you're feeling very overwhelmed, there can be different behavioral exercises that you can do to contradict that feeling of being overwhelmed. But of course, the main skills that were useful for people and that were important to people differed from person to person. So there's no one right fit for which skill is the best one out of the ones taught. But it's pretty encouraging that people seem to be taking away a lot of these skills from the program and that they were using them on a weekly basis after the program. So with the research initiative here, we've had funding support from the Public Health Agency of Canada to be able to conduct research studies about the training as it's been going. And we've split our data collections into essentially two big sides. So we are collecting data through surveys where people complete surveys before they start the program and then after the program and some follow-ups. And with these surveys, we'd like to answer questions such as whether or not BOSS improves aspects of someone's mental health. We're also interested in finding out whether these mental health changes associated with BOSS are different across the delivery modalities. So are there some changes that maybe are associated only with, for example, the peer groups or the online? And we're also interested in finding out whether these mental health changes associated with BOSS are different for English and French speakers, because there is that cultural element where some of these skills might be interpreted differently or have different usefulness in different backgrounds. We've also done some intensive interviews with participants that have gone through the BOSS training. And we've had conversations with them about their experiences in the training, what they took away from the training, any challenges that they had, and their overall impressions of BOSS. And we're looking to see, first of all, whether the BOSS training is seen as helpful by the PSP. So are they finding it helpful? Are they finding it useful for them? Is it something that's implementable for them? And also whether the training integrates well with PSP home and work lives. So we're interested in seeing whether this training is useful for people both in a work setting, but also in their broader lives. We've had some great interviews and some great conversation with participants so far. We've learned a lot of lessons from the research studies, and we're planning to expand on those as well with the current funding that we have. Generally, PSP seem to be preferring to be given a choice over the delivery modalities, and this was one of the overwhelming pieces of feedback that we had. Throughout the funding, the training has been available in those 3 delivery modalities that Dr. Bolt showed you, but people didn't always have a choice over which modality they took. Sometimes it was their organization that decided, okay, everyone is getting, for example, the online training, or everybody's going to go into the peer groups. And the overwhelming feedback that we had from people is that there's no right answer for which modality is the better one. It depends on what you can commit to for the training, whether or not you're ready to listen to other people's stories, whether you'd like to be in a group or you'd like to be able to do it on your own at your own pace. and people generally really wanted to be given a choice over which of the delivery modalities they got to go in. So we're going to do a quick poll here just to see from the audience what your opinion of these delivery modalities is. So if you were to take a training like BOSS or like one of the other trainings that Rachel showcased, what kind of delivery modality do you prefer? So do you prefer in-person classes with a group? Would you like to do virtual classes with a group? Or are you a person that really wants to do the online by yourself kind of training? So we'll leave that up for a couple of seconds here while people have a chance to respond. Okay. So it looks like we have a preference mostly for the in-person classes at 74%, and then 32% with the virtual classes with the group, and then 47% with the online. So this is also very useful for us to know as researchers, and for units that are developing new training programs. It's helpful for us to know what kind of deliveries you prefer, because they all take different amounts of resources. So it's important when you're planning the new trainings. So we've also talked to PSP about any challenges that they encountered while they were taking the BOSS training, or anything that they didn't like about the training or found difficult. And overwhelmingly, we had PSP discuss challenges from organizational pressures. So organizational pressures such as mandatory overtime, lack of equipment, or short debriefing times can really impact mental health, and can make it more difficult to seek out mental health resources or to keep up with these sorts of trainings. Participants found that this was one of the major challenges that they were encountering when they were going through the BOSS training specifically. But when they were talking to us, they were also saying that these challenges happen in more than just the BOSS training. So these seem to be really prevalent issues. For example, if you're being told that your mental health is important and that you should focus on finding these resources and taking these trainings, but then you're being mandated to put in a lot of overtime hours to the point where you have no more space for yourself at all. That can make it very difficult to then start to try to seek out these resources. So we'd also like to know from you if you have been negatively impacted by organizational stressors. And I know that this is quite a loaded question, but it's just for us to get a general understanding of whether these types of challenges are prevalent across all of the different sectors of PSP, or whether it seems to be something that's a little bit more localized. So it looks like we have an overwhelming amount of people answering yes, the 84%, and then 16% as no. So this again is very useful for us to know as well. Part of our responsibilities as researchers, and then broadly at CIPHER, are to work with PSP organizations and with governments to try to remove some of these challenges so that PSP can have easier access to mental health training and can get more out of the mental health training as they're taking it. So I want to close here with a quote from one of the participants that we spoke to in our interviews. your mind is your greatest personal protective equipment. We've heard overwhelming from participants that mental health is important to them, that they're seeking out mental health resources, and that they're going through these trainings, but that there are those barriers and challenges in place that make it really difficult to get to the trainings or to use some of the lessons that are given in the trainings. And then our responsibility here at CIPHER is to take that and then liaise with the organizations and the governments to hopefully make a better path forward and remove some of these barriers as we're going forward.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Ioachim and Dr. Bolt, and excellent presentations. And we have some questions. I'm going to start with this comment here from Pat. Keeping wellness at the forefront of PSP members can be challenging. Can BOSS be delivered over mini sessions?
So at the moment, the BOSS program, if you're looking at the group offerings, those run for weekly sessions, 1 session per week for 8 weeks. So then those are actually spaced out pretty well for people to be able to take the lessons from one module and then be able to think about them and apply them in their own lives and then come back the next week for the next session. And that can be really helpful in order to really engage with the material. But we have also heard from people that that can be really difficult when you have those schedule changes where you can't commit to something every week. The online training and the new developments are available as asynchronous courses, so you could do the course at your own pace and do the sessions as long or as short as you wanted them. But I think there is still that advantage there if you do them regularly to be able to get as much as you can out of the training.
Thank you. There was a question that came up, Rachel, during your presentation. It was really about the R2MR or Treatment 101. So once you walked away with the certificate, I think that this question is really about how is it renewed? How do you does the training change over time? So if you get your certificate, how quickly would you have to go back and get a new certificate, for example? Is the training being updated at that sort of level where you would feel like maybe next year I would need to go and be updated again?
Yeah, so from a research perspective, actually, that's something that we are looking at, including, again, the importance of filling out those surveys at that 3-month and 6-month post-course effort, is because we would be testing or looking to know, sorry, test is a bad word. Sorry, test maybe isn't the right word, but what we're looking for is to see whether or not you still remember the skills that you learned, 3 months prior or even post-course. Because if you've been applying them and if you've been using those skills regularly, and at 6 months you are still using them and you are still finding them to be, appropriate for where you are in your career, then we wouldn't necessarily recommend that you take something again right away after 6 months. It's really individualized. If you move into a different position, there's also a leadership module that can be taken. You would need a level 2 or a master trainer to specifically administer that. CIPHER doesn't do those leadership courses currently in our open enrollment programming. Treatment 101, once you have it, you have it. Unfortunately, there are some things that kind of, once they're in there, they do potentially become obsolete, just because if legislation changes in one province over another. And so, the goal would always be to have the content in there as updated as much as possible, but if there's any content or a specific link, especially in Treatment 101, because it is available for everybody and everybody has different provincial legislations. Certain sectors have different legislations in certain provinces. And so if there is a link that's provided in Treatment 101 that's specific to your province, we do always suggest that you take that information. We do also give you the option to be able to download some of that content to be able to keep it with you. so that you're always just referencing the websites, because the website of the source will always have the most updated information. So as far as Treatment 101 goes, because it's about how to access resources and how to kind of go through legislation and learning more about definitions of clinicians versus psychologists versus psychiatrists versus, you know, potentially a social worker who has a certificate, and what do all of those things mean. That content likely won't change on the regular, but certainly any type of legislation can be outdated as soon as we put it in there. The goal would always be to kind of do a review every few years to ensure that you are, you know, are updating at any given time. The last update that we did of R2MR content that we launched was we received the initial content in 2019, and then we did a refresher with some statistics. Specifically with some statistics before we launched our Train the Trainer program and ER2MR. So it does have the most up-to-date data that we can provide in there right now.
Okay, great, thank you. Jenny asks, is there any research on the longer term impact of a BOSS on PSP mental health? So say you're at the 1 to 2 year mark, are PSP still experiencing a positive effect from the training? Or have you found that there's a need for ongoing training? It's a great question.
It is a fantastic question, and it's one of the really important points for us as researchers to explore. The short answer is that we don't know, because the BOSS research hasn't been going long enough for us to have data for 1 year post-program or 2 years post-program where we're checking in with participants to see if those positive changes are still there after that amount of time. The publication that Nicole showed you with the previous research on BOSS, they did collect data up to a 10-month follow-up for a portion of those groups. So there is some data up to that extent, but because those groups were a lot smaller, we don't know whether those kinds of changes are going to be maintained on a larger scale as well. So far, from what we can see in our research, the changes seem to be maintained after the program, but that's at quite a short follow-up. So you're right that we do need more research on the long-term effects, and that's something that we're working on as well. But I think in general, any sort of training that aims to build skills will need some upkeep or some refresher. If you think about any sort of skill that you've learned in your life, whether it's a mental health related skill or a physical skill, those all need practice and upkeep at some point. So you don't ever learn, you know, to ride a bicycle once and then never ride it again and then retain the same amount of proficiency with it. So I think that goes for any sort of mental health endeavors as well, that there will be some need for refreshers or some need to practice those skills or keep them up. But exactly how long that time is between when you take the BOSS training or the sleep training and then you would need to take it again depends on the trainings, and I don't have specific research for those kinds of long-term effects right now.
Okay. You know, I think this question is actually related to both the questions that I just asked, and this is about it is about specifically the BOSS training, but all the training we've been talking about in general. We know that there's government funding attached to the training, and I think that there's a fear. It looks like one of the questions is, I think there's a fear that once that government funding dries up, what happens to this type of training? That's a big question for all of you to answer, but I think right now the training is available. What happens in a few years? What's the hope?
So currently the BOSS program, the government funding Wayfound has just closed the ability to use that government funding. We've allotted the amount of participants in the program that we receive funding for, but I believe it's still available for purchase, and maybe Dr. Ioachim, you would know more. But yeah, so that is definitely a concern that this funding, after time, there isn't that funding available, and we just yeah, hope that more funding will come available, more research will be done with this program, and And yeah, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Ioachim.
Yeah, so CIPHER is always working on securing more funding to support these kinds of training programs. At the moment, Dr. Bolt is right, the specific Public Health Agency of Canada funding, we're still running with the research portion of the project, but there are no more open seats for new PSP to take the BOSS training at this time. We have been very fortunate to receive a lot of government support where we've been able to train a massive amount of PSP with this program, which is great. But there are always new funding sources that are coming in and that organizations like CIPHER are securing. And if you're interested in the BOSS program and you happened to learn about it at a time where the specific government funding wasn't available, there are always a lot of organizational resources as well that are available. And you can get very far with campaigning for having the BOSS training in your organization with the specific funding sources and budgets that your organization or employer has. And we have also seen some people that have decided just to commit their own funds to the training. Some modalities are more personally affordable than others, depending on what you want to go for. But there are also available for individual sign up. So the training is always available, but whether the specific government funding is available depends on the time of the year. But a lot of organizations have the capacity to secure more funding and more seats for their employees if their employees feel that that's something that's valuable to them. And Rachel, you said that some of the courses are available for PSP to sign up right now, and that some of them are available in January. So I'll turn that over to you as well.
Yeah, so we are doing intake into our courses because we have the resources, because our courses were either built by or were received to use to CIPHER, and so it is kind of nested under CIPHER as opposed to externally like Wayfound is. So we are still continuing to offer the interventions as many times as we can, and we'll get as much data into the reports as what we can. We were offering multiple training, different types of training throughout the year. And so our sample sales are smaller, whereas BOSS was one program, large scale. And so our methodologies for recruitment were a bit different, but we are still taking intake into our program. So again, ER to MR does have space available in January and February. We have space in Treatment 101 because it's asynchronous. We can actually put as many people as we want in those courses. So there'll always be space in a Treatment 101 course. Sleep is a partnership, obviously, with Dr. Colleen Carney, and so I'm not sure how many more times that's going to be available, but there is a sleep offering in November that still has space, and then there is one in January as well. So it's still 2 more offerings of Sleep 101 if anybody's interested in taking that. As far as continued offerings after that, kind of as Gabby has spoken about, like the funding will come to an end, and on the research reports will be written or submitted. CIPHER is always looking to do strategic planning to see kind of like, again, what the availability might be to continue offering the programs, but those decisions haven't really been made yet. And so if you enjoy the programs and you want the programs, then, you know, everybody's going to have to kind of voice, like Gabby said, whether it be through organization, that you still are looking for those programs. But again, the strategic planning and whatnot is still ongoing in regards to those courses that are kind of nested right now under CIPHER, because again, some take more resources than others, and so some might be able to be continued and some might not be. But obviously, we're going to offer our courses for as long as we can, just to be able to offer the intervention, just to be able to try and get the training out to as many people as we can.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for that. I think we have time for maybe one more question, and I'm wondering about this because I feel like I'm the public, and about the public-facing research and how you as researchers inform the public about these findings, because I think it's as important for us who are outside of that space to know what is happening with our PSP. We are at their they are here at our behest as a public. So I wonder about that, the public sharing of the findings and how that sort of information is kind of put out into the public face. Gabby or Nicole.
Sure,
Or
I
Rachel.
So it is a very lengthy and difficult process, unfortunately, in terms of specifically sharing research findings. The research has to be written up essentially for research journals, and then that goes through a process of peer review, which can be very lengthy, and then that gets released as research articles. But those have to be written in sort of an academic language, which can be very hard to follow and to understand. So that can make it inaccessible for people oftentimes. There's also issues with some journals not being accessible for people outside of academic audiences. So for example, if you have certain journals, you might only be able to read articles in that journal if you have a university affiliation and then can sign up with your university. So that can make it really difficult to get that research out into the public space. So one of the big focuses that we have in our projects is knowledge translation and taking these findings that we're having and finding ways to do presentations at conferences that are specifically related to PSP at different PSP showcases, bringing those back to organizations with specific reports for organizational leadership so that they can have an idea about what's going on and they can make an informed choice, and making essentially as many public resources as we can so that we can get the knowledge that we have out into the public, and it doesn't have to be just centered around these research reports, although if you want specific research results, you would have to go to those reports. But I'll turn that over to you as well, Rachel, because you have a research team as well, and you've been doing a lot of different outreach and knowledge translation as well. So.
Yeah, a lot of the knowledge translation that we focus on is kind of twofold. Like CIPHER obviously as a knowledge translation hub, it's a part of their role to take that research knowledge and translate it into knowledge for the end user. But in that case, the end user is public safety personnel. It's not necessarily the general public. So anything on the CIPHER website is certainly available to the general public. All of the tools are also available to the general public. We do publish research summaries on the CIPHER website. So that is a place where we can showcase that academic work in a summary that is written in a way that makes it more accessible to the general public or to public safety personnel in general. We find that, utilizing or trying to recruit from our programs, that the best way is really about participation. Like, it's about participation in events and being able to kind of get in front of people. There are lots of ways to be able to access our resources online, and that's kind of the main hub where we try to draw people to if they're looking for access to information. But as far as like, how do you get them to that website where all that information is and where all those resources are, social media is a big one that we utilize, and CIPHER uses it as well. And then we just try to do the best we can as far as knowledge and awareness, and that knowledge into action to be able to kind of like put that information out to people so that they know how to access the information on the website, because that's kind of the largest portion or largest bulk of area where you're going to be able to get those resources in a way that that are manageable for the general public and public safety personnel in general.
Thank you so much. And I think that brings us to the end of our session today. And I think Nicole's cat has the zoomies, so I think that is definitely the indication that we have done it. We've powered through. It's time to hop off. Thank you all for sharing today, and folks can take a look back if you missed anything. This will be posted tomorrow, so you'll get the information on where you can have a look at this video if you missed anything or you want to share it. But thank you all for this. Is there anything that I'm missing? I don't think so. I think that's it. I think that's the end of our session for today. So thank you all, and we'll be back again in about a month or so with another session. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabriela.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.